Well, we're ready to start, Your Honor. I'm John Clarkson, the president of the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association. This is our first meeting since February. We're very happy that Albany's Mayor Kathy Sheehan could join us for our first online meeting going out live via Facebook. She's done many before, but we're new at it, so please forgive us the technical difficulties. With that, I'm going to go directly to the mayor, and thank you again for being with us, Mayor Sheehan.
Well, great. Thank you, John, and thank you to the Neighborhood Association for inviting me to your first Zoom meeting. It is sort of the new way that we're all communicating with one another, and sometimes it works well and sometimes it can be a bit clumsy, but I want to really thank everyone for the hard work that everyone has continued to do in very difficult times. And when I think about the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association and the diversity of Pine Hills, the business community that's been impacted, the not-for-profit community that's been impacted, and our residents who have been impacted, I think that we will look back on the last 100+ days and realize that the sacrifices that we made have led us to a place where we've continued to open, we've continued to move through the phases, and we have seen really no increase in the infection rates. And that's really good news. So we want to be able to continue that. And I think it's important to remember that that didn't happen by accident. It happened because of the sacrifices that people made, and it happens and continues to remain low because people are wearing masks, they're social distancing, and they're being considerate of themselves and one another. And I can't stress enough how important that is going forward. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, our business community. We know that a lot of our locally owned businesses have really struggled. There were real challenges with accessing the funds, even for some of our not-for-profits, going through all of the various hoops to be able to, secure PPP funding. The second round made things a little bit easier, but we know that it's a challenge. And because there isn't a specific business improvement district in Pine Hills, I want you to know that we are here for you. So Capitalize Albany Corporation provides resources and help for small businesses to be able to access funds that are available. And if you have had any issues or any struggles, please do not hesitate to contact my office, and we can get you in touch with people who can help you navigate the funding that is available. We also are going to be announcing very soon, we're awaiting final HUD approval, some CDBG funding that is available for our locally owned businesses and small businesses. We really want to focus on our minority owned businesses. And so we'll be rolling out the information about funds that are available. We've already announced that applications are open for community-based organizations to access funds to provide food for people who are food insecure, for daycare and summer camp programs, so that we can ensure as people go back to work, they have a place for their children to be safe and to be secure. And so we're providing funding to many community-based organizations that are providing childcare, and we want to ensure that people know about that. We have funding that is available for PPE and other necessities, cleaning supplies. So for our not-for-profits that are beginning to open back up and provide direct services to people, we want you to know that we do have resources available to you in order to be able to do that. So please go to the city website. We have an entire COVID page, and it has lots of links to all of this information and all of the resources that are available. And then I do want to take questions, but I want to speak briefly to the unprecedented pain and outpouring of trauma that we have seen in our community in response to the murder of George Floyd. And it really has resulted in an upheaval in our community unlike anything that we have seen. And we continue to work and listen to people in the community about what they want to see change as a result of the focus that we now have on what we all know is a system that is inequitable and is really one of the reasons that I get up and do what I do every day. It's one of the reasons that we have an equity agenda, because we know of the impact that decades and decades of discrimination and racism continue to have in our community, notwithstanding that all of us want to live in this community because of its diversity. We still are suffering from the consequences of structural racism and what that has yielded. And so I have never been more optimistic. We swore in a class of 30 new police officers today. We wanted to swear in 50, but because of the budget constraints that we're under, we hired a class of 30. And we had to meet with those recruits in small groups because of COVID. We very much want to keep this class healthy so that they can get through their training. And so we were super cautious in how we swore in this class. They were not allowed to have family members there. And we did it in small groups, 5 at a time. So I had to give my speech multiple times, but what I saw was a group of people who really are committed to serving our community. And what I said to them was, I don't think that there's ever been a time to have more hope about the future of policing and the future of public safety in our community. And I believe that we are going to look back, and when history looks back at where that change really took its huge leap forward was in 2020. And history tells us that, right? We have the Civil Rights Act, we have the Voting Rights Act. We've had these moments in time that have resulted in real change. And we are at that inflection point here in 2020. And so we have a group of police officers who are going to be trained in a new facility, a new academy with a new curriculum, and a commitment by myself and many others that we're going to change policing here. And we're going to make sure that our police officers are safer, that they're responding to the types of calls that police officers are trained to respond to, and that we are finally investing in the other services that we need to address the challenges in our community. We cannot continue to send police officers into situations where what we really need are caseworkers, where what we really need are mental health professionals, where what we really need are people who can help to find secure housing, to help negotiate disputes between landlords and tenants, and who can help a mom with a teenage son who she feels as though is really heading down the wrong path. And as much as we have police officers who some of them are very talented at those things, that's not what they are trained to do. And so we have to find that balance so that our police officers have backup. You know, we always think about our police officers backing us up. We need to back our police officers up so that when they arrive at a situation and they determine that what's really happening in this family is food insecurity, or what's really happening in this family is that there is a child that needs mental health services, or what's really happening in this family is that there's someone who needs addiction services, that they have someone who has their back, who can come in and who can address that situation and prevent future crime, violence, and disruption in the neighborhood and in that community. So as challenging as these times are, I am inspired, I am hopeful, and I'm grateful for this neighborhood association that really cares so passionately and deeply about these issues, about community, and about what we can do to create stronger neighborhoods and stronger community. So with that, John, I'll turn it back over to you, and I'm not sure how you're doing Q&A.
Well, we're going to go through just the board members are online to ask you their questions live, and we got a couple that were sent in, which I'll try and raise later. But I do want to thank you again. You know, in preparation for this, as well as looking at the technical preparation, I looked at your state of the city, and back there in January, February, you had a full agenda then. And like all of us, the agenda has simply gotten much larger and also much more challenging at the same point. So I think you did so seamlessly in your presentation to us. You really sort of brought us up to date very briefly. So I'm going to just serve as the MC right now. And I want to ask any board members, just raise your hand. I'll see you, and then I'll pin you, and you can ask a question. Okay, I'm going to go to Carolyn. Keith.
Hi, Mayor. Thank you so much for being with us today. I have two questions, mostly actually about recreation. I'm personally very concerned about our young people, some of our older young people, like teenagers, not really having enough structure and enough to do with school being out and camps not having started. And I know that you're planning to start the youth employment program soon. The question I have is, do we know when the playgrounds and basketball courts might be opening? Because the governor the other day said that was up to local mayors. And I also have a question if we have an update on where we are with the Ridgefield Park update. I know that most of the other playgrounds have been done around the city. I think Ridgefield Park was due for this year. And is that process being interrupted because of COVID? Thank you.
So thanks, Carolyn. And we did have a plan to redo, I believe it was 4 of our parks this year, and that has been delayed. And we're looking at how we can recover that construction schedule because construction was placed on pause as well. So I can get you an update on what that revised schedule is. The Recreation Department has really been focused on what it needs to do to stand up summer camps and our summer youth employment program in a COVID environment. And so going through all of the regulations and the requirements of that is really taking a lot of their time. But we are at the point now where we are signing people up for our summer camps. We have a good understanding of where they're going to be and what they're going to consist of. It will be far more limited than what we've been able to do in the past. And that really isn't so much, we do have incredible budgetary constraints, but I remain optimistic that we're going to get direct aid from the federal government to replace our lost revenue. And we're pulling funding from some other sources, particularly for recreation. So we are going to be able to have programming, but it's going to be limited in size because of the restrictions. We can't have more than 10 young people. They have to stay in a cohort. We have to think about what happens when there's inclement weather and we have to bring them inside. So we have to set those programs up in places where there is a building nearby that we can move them into. And so all of these things are creating some pretty significant challenges with the number of youth that we're going to be able to serve. We are moving forward with a summer youth employment program, but again, because under the rules, 14 and 15-year-olds cannot work at summer camps, it is going to greatly limit the number of youth that we have the capacity to serve. So I share your concerns about what we are going to do with our youth this summer. And we are in conversations with the charter schools, with the school district around opportunities to create the ability to find some structure in what is a very unstructured environment. With respect to recreation and playgrounds, now we do have the green light to move ahead and open our playgrounds. We really put off hiring seasonals, which is why Ridgefield Park and many of our parks look the way that they do. We are starting to hire seasonals. We are on it. We are going to be placing signage in all of our parks, though, that really are encouraging people to please help us maintain the parks. Please help keep them clean. We want people to have pride in these facilities. And we are limited in the number of people that we have to do the level of maintenance that we really want. We, with respect to basketball, the governor he didn't leave that up to mayors. What he said was that starting July 6th, basketball is a high risk sport, but it is up to us to open up those basketball courts in a way that is safe. So we are going to be putting the rims back up. We are going to be telling people how to use them safely. We're going to have to see what happens if there are pickup games and, lots and lots of contact. We're going to have to review that. We're going to have to look at where the infection rates go. But, I say this a little tongue in cheek. We're reopening our churches, which means that we have to reopen our basketball courts because in Albany, for some people, basketball is a religion. So, we want to be able to have the opportunity for skills and drills and other things for our youth this summer.
Can I just follow up, John? Just one thing on the maintaining the parks. Could that be something that some teenagers could be put together with some adults to do on a volunteer basis?
Well, I mean, look, we'd love to pay them to do it.
Well,
So,
yeah, but
you know, but it is, right now, I know we have these record unemployment levels. It's very hard to find people. So, you know, we are in an environment where, you know, we're having challenges. Many of the summer camp programs are having challenges finding people to fill these positions. So I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I want to be very, you know, transparent about my concerns, like what keeps me up at night. You know, what are we going to do for our kids? And are we going to have enough people to maintain our parks?
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Who's next? Don't be shy.
Looks like Virginia's got her hand up.
Thank you. Mayor, I don't know if this is something that is entirely in your bailiwick, but I was just wondering about the consolidated, I think it's called CCP. We had a presentation about that way back before we had to close down everything. And it sounded like a very interesting program about how cities would be able to investigate buying into buying energy from sort of a consortium type of thing.
Yeah.
And, we were told that the people who are managing it would hopefully be have something to tell us possibly by June. Could you tell us, has that been slowed down somewhere in the process, or if it's still ongoing somehow?
Yeah, I mean, the market really took a turn, right? You know, we saw negative oil prices. So, you know, we were entering into that it's a community choice aggregation. And I actually have to check and see whether, I believe that the council has authorized us to move forward, and we would go into that collaborative with Schenectady and Troy and Guilderland. There were a number of communities. So it really gave us some very strong buying power. So we have that authorization, we have the buying power, but right now the market is not positive for us to do that. We're going to keep an eye on it. Things are going to start to, you know, turn back on. The global economy will come back. You know, I have a lot of confidence in that. So, but we're, you know, we need to ensure that it's resulting in a savings for our residents rather than an increase.
Well, oh, Perry, yes.
Perry, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Nope.
No.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there I go. Let me just get the view switched around here. There we go. Just want to thank you so much for joining our meeting tonight. And I've got two things, which are maybe a little bit interconnected, but one is at the Damien Center, most of the time we have had much greater success and also prefer to have mobile crisis come if we're having a situation, because usually it is either mental health or substance use related. But I can't tell you how many times we've called mobile crisis and they've said, we can't come because we're already on another call, or we can't get to you. And so they end up having to send the police, who are, you know, in my experience, have been really fantastic, you know, about working with our people. I'm just wondering if we couldn't work together to advocate for more resources for mobile crisis as a potential assistance to police, so they're not dragged in a lot of times to things that truly are mental health related or substance use related.
So, you know, the governor has required that all municipalities with police departments across the state, he's directed their chief executives, their mayors, or town supervisors. We have to convene a review of all of our police policies. And one of the reasons that I'm optimistic is that, look, we've got a $56 million budget for our police department and 911 dispatch. That's a lot of money. That's actually larger than our entire tax levy. So, or around the same size as our tax levy. So, right now we're down 56 police officers. We've hired 30, and I have another 37 that I anticipate are going to retire over the next several months. So in 2021, we're going to be down another 56 officers. And one of the things that I think we can use this opportunity to do is to really analyze the calls for service that we're receiving, where they're coming from, what types of calls they are, and reimagine what we have local control over. I have no control over mental health emergency crisis because that's a county entity, right? And so,
right.
They're serving the entire county. I get it. So could we look at a model where next year we've got 56 openings and maybe we hire 30 police officers and 26 combination of mental health, caseworkers, crisis intervention, so that we're dispatching them and we're training our 911 on how to dispatch them. I don't know. I'm not a law enforcement professional. This is new territory. Mayors across the country are talking about this. One of the things that I'm excited about, though, is that we have the ability and the tools in place that would allow us to look at it, measure it, figure out whether it's working, and see if there is a way that we can be rethinking how we comprise our police departments to provide them with control over some of those services, so that when they're calling and making a referral, there's accountability back within the police department. So
I think that's a wonderful idea. The other thing is, the other question I have is, and there certainly seems to be a real rise in gun and shootings in the city, and this isn't necessarily, in the Pine Hills neighborhood, but do you have any idea of what the root cause could be of our particular situation in Albany, of why we're seeing such an increase?
We had a homicide this afternoon. We have had 12 people shot in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
And we have seen a huge increase in shootings in the city. I won't sugarcoat it. I will tell you that there has been an increase in shootings across the country. We don't know why. COVID is, we've seen drops in lots of other crimes, but we're seeing increases in domestic violence and increases in shootings. I am expecting, I've asked for an emergency meeting. We're part of an initiative it's called GVI, and it's about reducing gun violence. And it is a program that's nationwide, but that really is something that DCJS in New York State really supports and pushes. And it includes other partners. So it includes the district attorney's office, the federal process. So it's the state, federal, state, and local level. So I've asked for an emergency meeting. We have not been able to have, as part of this program, we normally do what are called call-ins, where we bring people who are on probation and parole, who we know are either at risk of being the victim of violence or potentially perpetrating violence. And we have a conversation with them, and we offer them support services. We give them a number that they can call 24/7. If they're housing insecure, if they're food insecure, if they want help finding a job, if they want help continuing their education, we have a contract with Trinity Alliance, and they provide those wraparound services. So we haven't been able to do one of those because of COVID. So we're really looking at a number of issues. I will say the shooting violence that we've had over the last 24 hours is adults. It is not children. These are men in their 20s and 30s. And it appears to be, related to disputes between these groups. And it's very troubling. It's very troubling. I mean, it's just, for it to culminate in a homicide, and we're not sure that it's over at this point.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
So, Mayor, you spoke positively about the possibility of aid, I think, for parks programs, but I guess overhanging all of the good work that we're looking for the city to do is a concern about finances. We're not sure what the future of federal aid is. There's also giant declines in sales tax revenue. And we worry a lot because in our neighborhood, you know, there is some help for the businesses, but we're very, very concerned that many of them may fail and may not come back. And we worked very hard, as did you, on things like the reopening of the Madison. We've now had a coffee brewer from Del Mar who came in to take over after Tiara Farms closed. In addition to supporting them, both by visiting them and by promoting them, we're wondering what else do you think we could do, and what else do you think the city can do to help keep these local businesses going?
Well, as I said, we're going to be announcing about $1 million that we have available in grants for these businesses. This is in addition to what we announced with respect to the funds that are available for businesses that were impacted by the looting and some of the damage that occurred as a result of the rioting that we saw in the Central Ave, mainly business district in downtown. So, you know, there is funding that we have available. You know, the federal government did provide some community block grant money to be used for COVID recovery. And we have received, I believe, just over $3 million. Now, some of that is for homelessness. You know, there are some specific criteria for certain of that money, but we're taking $1 million of that and creating a grant program for those businesses. The other piece of that money that I forgot to mention earlier, it's already been announced, which is another concern I'm sure in the Pine Hills neighborhood, is rental assistance and mortgage assistance. So we want to ensure that if people are having difficulty making those rental payments, I believe that we anticipate providing that funding to United Tenants to be the agency that helps to distribute that. But what we also don't want to see, right, are a bunch of evictions. We're not sure whether students are coming back, so there's going to be stress on landlords with respect to that. And so we want to ensure that we are advocating for funding in that area as well as some mortgage assistance. So we do have programs that are available. We do need more. We need that revenue replacement. The state needs that revenue replacement so that we don't have cuts. But you know, in our case, you know, again, we're not talking about a lot of money. For the city of Albany, it's about $18 to $20 million this year, with maybe another 10 million next year, I think would allow us to be able to continue to provide outstanding services, help businesses get back on their feet, continue the great park maintenance and quality of life initiatives that I announced in my State of the City. You know, in the grand scheme of things, it's, you know, it's a lot less than what the cruise lines needed. So, you know, I figure if we can help the cruise line industry, we can help our cities. And you know, the reason I remain optimistic is that this is happening to cities across the country. It's happening to Democratic mayors and Republican mayors, Democratic governors and Republican governors. And every time I'm on calls with mayors from across the country, we're all singing from the same sheet of music, advocating for this funding. And I do believe the Senate knows that we need to do this. They're just trying to figure out how to package it up politically and figure out what they're going to want to trade it for. And, you know, you know, that's above my pay grade, but we'll get there. That's what I am cautiously optimistic about that.
Well, optimism is a great quality and very necessary in these days and times. Other questions for the mayor?
I see Rick. Do you see Rick?
Yep.
So eventually it will unmute. So as you probably are painfully aware, theaters don't get to open until phase 4, whenever that's going to be. We're trying to figure out what we can do so that perhaps we can do some shows outside, maybe some family shows in the parks during the summer. And so my question is, who would be the contact to work with the city?
So, again, I think that those types of reopenings are going to be the last. And I don't even think that they're going to happen in phase 4, quite honestly. I think that there will be sort of stuff that is off limits for a period of time. And part of that is the risk to performers. Performing on a stage is a super spreading type of activity. And so I think that is something that within the theater industry, I sit on the board of Proctor's Theater. I'm on the board at the Palace, the Albany Symphony Orchestra, figuring out when performers, stagehands, and others are going to feel safe and comfortable coming back to work, and what types of safeguards would have to be in place, I think is probably the biggest unknown out there. Because what they are finding is that many of the cases and many of the upticks in spread are associated with these sort of super spreading events. People in close contact, singing, shouting. It's why we were so concerned about the protests. But I will say, if you look at the video footage of the protests here in the city of Albany and in Troy and in other places, the majority of people are wearing masks. It's less for the audience, Rick, than it is for the performers. So maybe, one person shows, or creatively, putting whatever, however you do it.
We have full head masks for the actors.
What?
Basically, what we were looking at was children's theater, a lot of animal characters, and we have full head masks for the performers, where we put a wireless mic inside. And in order to communicate, they can easily be 6 feet apart, but also that there's no air coming out of the thing toward the other performers.
Right.
But
But you know how kids are. I was a theater kid. We're very emotional. And when we're practicing or rehearsing, we love to hug each other. I was asked, and not to be crude about it, but I was asked about, can we start Little League baseball practice? This was in phase 1, right? But could we bring 10 kids out and, socially distance them and have them throw the ball? And I said, you could do that, but just remember that kids pick their noses. So, it's just in the nature of being a child. And we just want to be cognizant of it and do it in a way that's safe. But kids are less likely to get it. So that's the other good thing.
That's why we're looking at unemployed adult actors.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, Mayor, I'm going to thank you very much. I think it's time we let you go to your next Zoom meeting, or perhaps even take some time for yourself. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to do this again.
All right.
sometime.
Thanks. Bye.
So please stay with us. Now we're going to go through our regular monthly meeting. And I do want to make mention of a thing or two that I was going to do at the beginning, but we were late coming on. I want everyone to know that there will be a Zoom meeting, of course, of the city's bicycle and pedestrian committee. They're doing outreach on a new plan. And this will be for neighborhood meeting number 3 on Monday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So you can go to the planning department for details about that. And I think that's the only announcement I need to make. I will tell you that we will be resuming our meetings in the fall. The Pine Hills Neighborhood Association generally has its meetings the 3rd Thursday of each month. We have them September through the fall, and then we have them in the spring. We do not generally have them in June, July, or August, and we won't be this year. We are going to continue having meetings that you can join us in. We're going to work with some of the other neighborhood associations, as well as perhaps the Albany Public Library, to try and get support. The Zoom technology and other web conferencing technology is very good, but generally it requires both expenditures. The better versions of it cost money, and it does require a lot of expertise and several hands on the controls, so to speak. So that is something we're going to work on and look for that in the fall. Lastly, I want to make an announcement that people may have heard of already, but the board voted that for this year, given the stresses that COVID has put on our neighborhoods and on many people individually, of course, and on budgets, we are allowing for no fee or free membership for any business or person, a returning member, a new member who would like to join for 2020. So if you would like to take advantage of that and see if the neighborhood association works for you, perhaps participate a little bit more in neighborhood affairs, we'd love to have you do it. Just go to our website or our Facebook page and you will find a way to email us there, and just give us your name, your address, an email address, and we will be in touch and make sure you get hooked up with the neighborhood association. So with that, we normally go through the committee, officer, and other reports. And Luke, are you present yet in the meeting? Luke Rumsey?
He was having trouble getting in. I don't know if Lori was able, I forwarded his messages from Lori, or to Lori, so.
Well, he's still not here, so why don't we move on then to zoning and code enforcement? And I will,
Sure. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So a few updates from zoning and code enforcement. When we last met, so since we last met, there has been approval for a Dominican restaurant called, I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this wrong, called El Gran Pilon at 319 Ontario Street, which I think of as the old Rose Tacos. It's been like a yogurt shop or something after that, but that didn't last very long, at the corner of Morris and Ontario. So that was approved by the planning board on April 21st. A lot of folks have been wondering what's going on with, I think the final name of the project was the Loft at Pine Hills, the apartments in the vicinity of Western and Quail. I checked in with the planning department today on that. They are moving along. They are moving along slowly. They've had a couple of transitions, but the project is still progressing, though slowly. So as far as we know, it's still going to happen. And there is something currently now on the BZA agenda for a sign at St. Rose. And the Zoning and Code Enforcement Committee is looking into that. And the way that the Zoning and Code Enforcement Committee works is once something goes on the agenda, we try to attend the workshop of the board, whatever board is meeting. None of us were able to attend that BZA workshop. So I will follow up with a couple of people who serve on the BZA to see if there are any concerns. It seems to me as a pretty uncontroversial request, but just, do our due diligence. And then we decide after that workshop whether we are going to make a recommendation to the full board, whether to support, not support, or take no position. So that's our process. Yes, Rick.
Basically, I went over and looked at the sign. It's 6 inches tall and 10 feet long. And it's the name of the person that donated the money for rehabbing it. Basically, the sign company put it above the side entrance instead of putting it in front of the front entrance. And St. Rose wants to simply put up a new sign in front of the front entrance. It's kind of dumb, but that's the core of the problem.
Right. yes, that's the core of the problem. Again, I just want to see what the BZA members asked at the workshop, but my guess is, you know, it's my personal guess is it's fine. But we all have to come together on that. So those are the updates from the Zoning and Code Enforcement Committee.
Thanks, Leah. Carolyn, are you able to do the Midtown Pine Hills Improvement Group?
Yes, I can. So like everything else, the Pine Hills Improvement Group shut down more or less entirely through March, April, and May. We have started, the core of us who have been coming to most of the meetings have started to get together remotely and talk about what we can and can't do. It seems unlikely in the extreme that we will have any large gatherings this fall. So that kind of community building is unlikely to happen. However, Luke is of the opinion that, or from talking to parents, Luke has had the impression that the students some of the students who would live in the neighborhood are likely to come back. But there is no plan for in-person programming. So most of that will be remote. So among the things we're still hoping to work on include the trash and litter issue that we started working on. We are not sure if we're going to be able to do the survey we had planned, but we hope to bring in more stakeholders and possibly do some sort of education for the Greek organizations, Albany Greek organizations around trash and litter. We're also pulling a group together to work on addressing the tree cover loss in Midtown Pine Hills, which has been an ongoing issue, and there are more people who are noticing that and would like to work on that. So I'm just starting to get something like that going. And we're still working on finalizing a plan for Midtown Pine Hills Park. That has sort of moved to the bottom of the list, in part because it seems unlikely that, you know, the planning department is going to have the bandwidth to even meet with us to talk about this right now. So, and then the last thing is that Luke and I have talked about trying to get basic information about, especially our restaurants in Midtown Pine Hills, get information together to share with students, because they will often order using different apps, and our small businesses don't always come up on the top of the app. So if there's a way we can communicate to students, oh, well, this particular restaurant uses this particular service delivery and that particular restaurant uses that service delivery, but they're right around the corner from you, that might help support our businesses a little bit with the students who do come back. I do know some landlords are struggling to rent, so I don't know how full we will be. But there is an expectation at least some students who live in the neighborhood will be back. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Carolyn. Upper Madison Group, Virginia. Virginia?
Okay, yeah, I had to unmute. All right. Following up with what Carolyn said, it looks like the Upper Madison Street Fair probably will not happen. It was scheduled for October 5th. However, we do have last year's proceeds that we've been spending on upgrading the streetscape. We've also gotten some money from Price Chopper and a couple of other grants and some donations. We've partnered with the Albany Parking Authority, who's given us some planters. So we're going ahead with planting new trees. We're getting the planters. We have built a planter on the westernmost edge of DeWitt Clinton Park. Our main problem is accessing water. Water is very difficult you basically have to find somebody who will water and pay them, or and finding somebody who'll water and pay them even more. So what we're trying to do is to sort of negotiate with the Price Chopper to see if maybe we can have access to their outdoor water outlet, because there's no point in planting things when you can't water them. We're also trying to work with local businesses, promoting them. And we have, possibly we might start up the summer concerts if the Elks Club opens. And we're hoping to look at the Pine Hills Film Series in September if there's a possibility of using the theater. So people should be looking at our Upper Madison Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages to follow along what's going on there. And of course, to visit the neighborhood. Outdoor dining is in full swing. I think that's about it. And so is indoor now, yes, but I mean, it started with outdoor. Okay, I hear somebody from the other room correcting me on that.
Well, speaking of John, would you like to give a report on membership? John, you're not coming through with the audio.
Have to unmute him.
Alf?
Okay,
Okay.
now we can hear you.
There we go. We have 152 members, 4 of which are the freebies. And that's it.
Okay. All right. All right. So Eric Shadow couldn't be here tonight. I'll give the treasurer's report. The current Trusco account is $5,131.42. $837 of the balance is the remainder of the Midtown Park grant money. So that's to be put aside. In other words, we have miscellaneous funds in the PayPal account, and most of it was transferred to Trusco. So that's the financial picture. I was hoping that Luke Rumsey would be able to join us, but he's not been able to. I see we're all curious if the students are coming back. I will say, as one who borders one of the heavily populated student streets, many of them have never left. There were a number of graduation parties, even though they generally were not here. And I can also tell you, as someone married to a teacher, that generally all the schools are making plans and contingencies, but nobody yet really knows what's going to happen. So we're just going to have to remain in suspense for this time. But you may all rest assured that the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association will be back in September, hopefully with a slightly more polished video meeting style and perhaps some more assistance. So we'll work on that. In the meantime, you can get in touch with us via email. And as I mentioned earlier, we would love to have you get in touch with us if you'd like to take advantage of the no-fee membership this year. Just send us an email at pinehillsna@gmail.com, or give us a call on the telephone number, which is available on our website. It's 518-250, I don't call it often, 6833. So 518-250-6833, and you can leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. With that, we're going to adjourn, and we will see you all again in September. Thank you very much for joining us.